My name is Clara Morgan, and I turned 40 last month. That if you had told me 10 years ago that I'd be living alone in a one-bedroom apartment above a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon, surrounded by half-finished watercolor paintings and a cat named Olive, I'd have laughed. Not because it sounded tragic, but because it sounded too quiet for the woman I used to be. That I used to be a wife, a mother, a woman who thought she'd already written the love story of her life. But that was before everything fell apart, before Mark, my ex-husband, decided that we've just grown into different people, which is a polite way of saying I've found someone else who makes me feel young again. Before our daughter, Sophie, left for college in New York and the house felt emptier than air. Before I started painting again, not because I wanted to, but because silence needed a shape. That's how I met Ethan Cole. He walked into the gallery where I displayed my work one rainy Thursday, tall, with silver at his temples and eyes that looked like they'd seen every storm Oregon could offer. He wasn't the kind of man who filled a room. He absorbed it quietly. He lingered in front of my painting Still Water. A canvas I'd poured my divorce into shades of gray, blue and fractured light. When he turned toward me, he said, "It feels like something that's waiting to breathe." No one had ever described my art like that. And maybe no one had ever looked at me like that either. We met again 2 days later. Not by design. I was in Brewhouse, the cafe below my apartment, sketching in my notebook, when I heard that same calm voice ordering a black coffee. "Clara Morgan," he said, recognizing me instantly. "The woman who paints rain like it's an emotion." We sat together, talked about the city, about how he'd moved from San Francisco after his company's merger. Tech life, endless spreadsheets, none of it matters once you lose someone. That caught my attention. He told me his wife had passed away 3 years earlier. Cancer. He didn't speak of her like a ghost, more like a song that still played quietly somewhere in the background of his days. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to explain my loneliness. That night, after he walked me upstairs, he stopped at my door, hands in pockets, and said, "You ever feel like you're living the sequel to your own life, and you're not sure who wrote it?" I smiled. Every day. Ethan didn't rush. We spent weeks walking along the river, cooking simple dinners, talking about everything from literature to loss. He was the kind of man who noticed small things, like how I always paused before starting a new painting, as if asking permission from the canvas. He'd say, "You're afraid it won't be as beautiful as what's in your head." And I'd laugh because he was right. He had a daughter too, Emily, 22, living in Seattle. I never met her, but he mentioned her often, with pride and distance mixed together. The way I spoke about Sophie. It felt balance. 2 people who'd already broken, finding rhythm again. Until one evening in November, when the balance shifted. He came to my apartment carrying a small box. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name on it. "I need you to read this," he said quietly, "but not now. When you feel ready." He kissed my forehead, smiled, and left. The next day, he was gone. No calls, no texts, no answer at his apartment. The landlord said Ethan had left early that morning, after paying the next 2 months' rent in advance. No forwarding address. For 3 days, I didn't open the letter. I was too afraid it would explain something I wasn't ready to understand. When I finally tore it open, I found a short note in his neat handwriting. "Clara, sometimes love comes with an expiration date we can't read yet. Please forgive me. I'll come back when the truth stops hurting both of us." That was all. I tried to move on. I painted darker things. I stopped checking my phone. But grief, even the unexpected kind, finds you in the smallest ways. 3 months later, on a cold February morning, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something made me answer. "Mrs. Morgan? This is Detective Paulson from the Portland Police Department. Do you know a Mr. Ethan Cole?" My stomach turned to ice. "Yes," I whispered. "Why?" "There's been an accident," he said. "A car found off the highway near Mount Hood. The driver's ID lists him as Ethan Cole. We need someone to identify the personal effects." The room went silent. Even Olive, my cat, seemed to stop breathing. At the station, they handed me a small evidence bag, his watch, his wallet, a silver ring I'd never seen him wear before. But when I asked where the body was, the detective frowned. "The vehicle was empty. There's no sign of him." Weeks passed. No trace of Ethan. The police called it a disappearance, not a death. The car had veered off a cliff but stopped before hitting the bottom. The door open, footprints leading away, then vanishing in the snow. That I told myself he might have survived. Maybe he'd run. Maybe the letter had been his goodbye. And then in April, I received an email that no sender name, no subject. Just a single line. Check your mailbox at dawn. That I should have ignored it. But I didn't. At sunrise, I opened the rusted mailbox downstairs. Inside was a small envelope, no stamp, no address, containing a Polaroid photo that it showed me, standing at the window of my apartment the night before. The handwriting on the back said, I had to disappear before they found me. It happened on a rainy night in June. That I was closing the gallery after a late event when I heard a voice behind me. Clara. I turned. Ethan or Daniel stood there, soaked thinner, but unmistakably him. That I didn't move. Neither did he. I had to leave, he said. They were following me. I didn't want you caught in it. I wanted to scream, to hit him, to ask 1,000 questions. But instead I whispered, you let me think you were dead. He stepped closer. It was the only way to keep you safe. Lightning flashed outside, casting him in shards of light and shadow. That he handed me a folder. Inside is everything. Proof of what they did. And what I did. I'm leaving for good this time. I just wanted to see you once more. He reached out, and I stepped back. I loved you, I said, voice trembling. But I can't live chasing ghosts. He smiled sadly. Then remember me as one. And just like that, he was gone. Again. 2 weeks later, I received another letter. That it wasn't from him. It was from his daughter, Emily. Mrs. Morgan, I don't know how much my father told you, but he asked me to send this if anything happened to him. I'm sorry for the lies. He wasn't hiding from the law. He was hiding from the people he exposed. He gave his testimony under a different name. He's safe now, in witness protection. That he wanted me to tell you. Stillwater finally breathed. I cried for hours. That a year has passed. That I still paint, but my work has changed. More light, less rain. Sophie visits often and life feels honest. Sometimes at sunset, I sit by the window and think about Ethan, or Daniel, or whoever he had to become. That I wonder if he still watches the rain the same way I do. That if he still remembers that quiet November evening when everything started. Maybe love at 40 isn't about happy endings. Maybe it's about finding someone who reminds you you're still capable of beginning again, even if the story doesn't last forever. Because every love, no matter how short, leaves a color on your canvas. And mine, for all its twists and vanishings, was the color of still water finally breathing.